So we have xDoughynut on some cool stuff. Sivir Renekton against Trundle for Brinster. And both streamers, you guys should definitely check out xDoughynut and Brinster. Great dudes.
So this is the Sivir Renekton build with Demacia. Now, this list had a little bit of a spotlight back in the early stages of the metagame as one of the first counters to Trundle, where you just had like big tanky units in the mid game. You had the Spell Shield on Sivir and Ruin Runner, and that list was making use of Garen as well. But now with Renekton, you have a power play on 4 alongside Sivir. You have something that likes to chump block the Blades and the Sand Soldiers for Azir Aurelia. So I do like the idea with this deck. We already have double Tattered Banner in hand for xDoughynut, and this is just going to keep these units alive and make sure they get the trades they want. But Brinster now does have Blighted Ravine, 2 of them in the hand, and that means that you're still going to be able to sweep away some of these units despite the Spell Shield, which has been, you know, a major factor in the list that can keep up the pressure against TLC in the mid game.
Yep, and I mean, Spell Shield is such a powerful keyword, right? Like we talked about earlier, before, you need 2 answers to be able to deal with Spell Shielded units, and often, you know, you're not going to have the exact answer you want to ping off a Spell Shield. You might not have a Vile Feast, you might not have an Ice Shard, and so then you're having to use, you know, a Flash Freeze or a Avalanche to ping that off. And that's a big gain for the Overwhelms or Spell Shield side.
And Brinster set up the Blighted Ravine, not only to damage the Sivir, but to just tell xDoughynut you aren't allowed to develop anymore this turn. And xDoughynut does not care, slams down the Ruin Runner and says, these units are going to get wiped, but I'm going to deal my 11 damage first.
That second Blighted Ravine is really tough here.
So if only a unit was played for the Cataclysm.
Yeah.
So the mid game has been washed away by Brinster. Crisis potentially averted, and xDoughynut now needs to find a way to deal this final 9 damage. Again, Demacia excels at getting this mid game board dominance and then pushing through with a rally. There's no burn that Brinster is going to need to worry about. And by playing now a Renekton, you know, the Flash Freeze and other removals are going to be that much more valuable. Tattered Banner with the Renekton, though, is going to be very strong because now you can get these challenges and make sure you get the trades that you want. Renekton, again, gets +2/+1 whenever he challenges a unit, and this is the other side of the equation. We've seen Ruthless Predator, Merciless Hunter, Bakai Sandspinner, Rockhopper, granting Vulnerable as a way to activate Renekton. But when you're able to give him Challenger, he's guaranteed to eat the prey that he wants. He now gets to choose his victims, and so even more overwhelm damage being presented against Brinster to pressure here.
And we do see the Ruination still sitting in hand for Brinster. It'll be interesting to see if he opts to use that this round, opts to not use it this round, says I'm going to play Ice Pillar, and goes for the Flash Freeze. Also a good play, staying at a very healthy 9 HP, until we see the Repost come down, now going to 7 HP.
Still trying to push through a little bit of damage. The Renekton wasn't really under a lot of threat there, but every little bit of damage counts. When you're getting into this stage of the game here with Ice Pillar coming down, you're starting to sweat if you're versus TLC. Do they have the combo pieces? We're still waiting for a Lissandra to come down.
The problem that I have with these Overwhelm decks, and they are very good decks, is just, maybe it's because I played aggro for too long, but I'm always wanting a little bit of burn. I'm always feeling like I might come up 1 or 2 damage short, and the lack of ability to get that 1 or 2 damage once you've struck with your big Overwhelm, I wish for when I would play these that had that flexibility of a Ruinous Path or a Noxian Fervor or a Decimate, and that is where Farron, I think, comes in really well in the decks that do run him as sort of that top-end finisher of, okay, maybe I will have some access to burn.
Yeah, a lot of the aggressive decks these days do play a lot for board, and because so many decks are also trying to play for board to develop chumps against these aggressive decks and Aurelia Azir, you sometimes do need to find a way to go over the top or underneath. And, you know, Shurima Demacia, not known for their elusive damage. If there is ever maybe a nerf to some cards and they no longer make the cut for the deck, maybe it does open up that room for Ruinous Path. But Brinster has opened up room for a leveled up Lissandra and a Watcher in hand.
And no way to combo off Watcher at the moment, but there is the Babbling Bjerg in hand to draw the next Matron. So we are on a clock here on the side of xDoughynut.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say, you know, what your opponent has in store after they've done this first portion of the combo, going into the attack token now with the Watcher ready to go.
I like the
He's trying to decide what the best Cataclysm target is here. I think he definitely wants to go for it. It's just deciding what's best. You got to take advantage of these opportunities when the TLC player is on no mana. You don't have to worry about the freezes or them just like vengeancing your Renekton in response, and your Cataclysm gets wasted.
It was definitely very interesting to see a Frostbitten Renekton still have 5 attack. And so now, you know, 6 HP is very respectable for xDoughynut. If there was another rally as part of this equation, just a little bit more overwhelm, the double Blighted Ravine was certainly the blessing that Brinster needed to survive that mid-game assault and get to the combo piece here. It's just going to put the Avalanche out to wipe these 2 remaining attackers and just buy a little bit more time. Even though the Watcher is in hand, we don't have the final piece of the puzzle to get that discount.
And these are not really the top decks you want to be seeing on the side of xDoughynut here. An Honored Lord, that is a card you want to see much earlier in the game. You'd want to see some Ruin Runners, some more solid mid-game, maybe another Sivir coming down. Those are the top decks that give you a chance at winning this game. But drawing 2 drops at this point, there you go. We spoke it into existence. A solid Ruin Runner draw.
So Ice Shard will come through, and this will, of course, pop the Rune Runner spell shield. If there was any threat of, you know, another Riposte like we saw earlier, or Shaped Stone to try to push through with this, that is not going to be the case. Just popping the spell shield, maybe pressuring with a, you know, a Frostbite on top of this. xDoughynut just doing the best they can to, again, just try to close this out. This is the desperate times. And with Brinster not reacting to this play, potentially. Oh, nope, does decide to block, indeed. And so Concerted Strike is going to come through just to move this blocker out of the way and get the Rune Runner to hit for as much as possible. The tough on the Nexus going to be very important here, combined with Withering Wail to just sustain through this final turn.
Yep.
And this is going to set up the Spectral Matron now to bring the Watcher to bear.
Interesting that Brinster didn't opt to play the Entomb there on the Ruin Runner, waiting to save that for a potential rally. Feels safe at 4 with Tough Nexus. And probably a good read based on opponents' lists. He knows there's no reach incoming, and the main thing he has to worry about are those rally effects. So a pretty heads-up play there, I would say, from Brinster. Some people may just slam the Entomb.
And despite everything, xDoughynut did put up a very good fight. It just came down to Brinster getting pretty much the key card you need for a matchup like this. the Blighted Ravine, not only wiping through those spell shield units that usually, you know, force you to spend a lot more value to answer them, but just that little bit of extra healing that's gone through. And even committing to double Watcher here just to send the message, right? And so here it is, the deck obliteration. The lethal will not be able to be avoided from this position. No champions in play. There's going to be no shuffle. And Brinster is going to take this game with TLC.
Yep, locking it out. Locking it out and locking it in.
Just a few key top decks are really the factors between victory and defeat here. If xDoughynut had gotten like another rally or just another Sivir or something with Spell Shield to just survive through the rest of this removal, it could have been it. And wait! There is yet one rally, and the Entomb was saved.
Yep.
Like you talked about, and that is truly going to close that out.
Well played.
Brinster showing. A lot of decks have been bullying TLC throughout today's broadcast, but Brinster getting revenge for the other TLC players in the bracket. Getting a pretty strong showing there.
So we will wait to jump into the next game, and it looks like it is already happening. So we can just dive right back in.
Yeah, the players, again, are just really excited to get these rounds through. I want that run back. I want to just keep playing, especially while I'm still fresh, while I'm still in that mindset. xDoughynut especially, sticking to the same Demacia Shurima list. You don't need to shift or think about any new strategies. You're just going to commit to what you have. And Zoe on turn 1 now for Brinster, who is bringing that classic Zoe, Aurelion, Sol. No Shyvana's in the mid game. Is going all in on the Zoe for the early, and Aurelion Sol to top out the curve.
So Sqweeby, as a Zoe Asol main yourself, someone I've seen play a lot of Zoe Asol here.
Yes.
Do you think xDoughynut has any chance here? What do you think the matchup? Who do you think it's favored for, and how much?
It's hard to say, really. It can be very close. The hand right now for xDoughynut, I think, actually looks quite good, given that you have the Sivir and the Renekton, and the Spell Shield can do a lot in this matchup, in terms of, you know, stopping one Hush or something like that. But the tech and cards you get access to from Zoe, something like a Crescent Strike, something like an Equinox, those cards hit hard in this matchup into the Overwhelm list. It can just completely throw off your game plan. So it's definitely very close. It does depend on how much lifesteal Zoe Asol gets access to throughout the course of the game. I would typically say that it's probably slanted in favor of the Zoe Asol deck, but I may have a bias because I love this deck.
Yeah, so you can really see how there's still a lot of room for, you know, strong decision-making in plays here. Zoe on turn 1 has been great, and even though the Crescent Strike is allowing Brinster to stun this board, delay the onslaught, you aren't answering the board, and it's only a matter of time before this Renekton breaks free and is maybe able to swing through and deal some real damage here. Brinster does have the tech with the Solari Shield Bearers, and so can develop a really big HP pool to block Overwhelm if the need presents itself. And it's ironic that by using the triple Zoe variant of this deck, which is sort of kind of faded away, but also teching in the Shield Bearers, this one is almost tailor-made to stop the Overwhelm lists that have been cropping up.
Yeah, I would say so. There is also a judgment on the side of Brinster that we should be watching out for. 2 Concerted and only 2 Hush. But there is also Star Shaping as well, and no Radiant. So we have access to a good amount of heals. 3 Sunforger, 3 Fang. Zoe is going to be doing what she does best, and that's just offering maximum flexibility on the side here of Brinster. And it's a threat once it starts getting up into that 6, 7, 8 range of, you don't want those keywords applied, so you have to have something like a Ruthless Predator or an Exhaust to take care of that.
Yeah, she's currently 4 out of 10. The Screeching Dragon is also a fantastic development, just to threaten xDoughynut's board in return, but also to just have a big unit to block some of this overwhelm. If they aren't presenting the lethal, you can dip down if to very low HP totals if you're Brinster, because you maybe have Star Shaping or Hush to bail you out of a potential lethal from xDoughynut. And when you're playing a deck like this, that's again very similar to the Freljord Overwhelm, where you're committing to a very straightforward line of play. You have no choice but to just develop and swing.
Yep.
Ruthless Predator being used to take down the Screeching Dragon and not the Zoe. xDoughynut recognizing that this evening out the board is the bigger threat, rather than Zoe just getting some Crescent Strikes here and there.
That decision, I can't see into the future, but it may come back to bite xDoughynut. It's sort of like a TF. If you let it sit on the back line for too long, it's gonna catch up with you. So I understand wanting to kill the Screeching Dragon. That card can also get out of control. We will see what happens here, but I would just be keeping an eye on this Zoe as the game progresses.
You might be able to get a cheeky Sivir's Ricochet to kill the Zoe. Might be what he's like praying for here, but
especially
yeah,
I would say
risk.
yeah, that's true.
And also very interesting attack here, just to clean up the board a little bit, try to push through a little bit with the Ruin Runner. Didn't want to risk the Renekton against the potential of Sharp Sight there, and wants to keep it alive. The Renekton's Ruthless Predator did matter a little bit for keeping the board dominance, and I'm wondering if perhaps there's another Renekton in hand, and xDoughynut is just relying on that line.
It would have been interesting to see Brinster hold back, maybe potentially the Sharp Sight there in case of a Ricochet, but it's a very tough call to make, maybe not the correct one, but Zoe is now at 7 out of 10, so it's up there in terms of a threat for the side of xDoughynut. I mean, giving your entire board Elusive or Lifesteal is pretty much game-ending on the spot, so we may be just jamming a Ricochet here and hoping it hits Zoe, which we have decent odds of doing, right?
If you're feeling the pressure, at 6 mana, this is truly a desperate line.
This card reminds me a lot of Arcane Missiles in Hearthstone. I don't know if you guys...
Oh, we hit it.
And it hits! It deals 1 damage to everything. Look at that. Zoe goes down. Fantastic Ricochet, but that's all of xDoughynut's mana for this round for the most part. And this is just a ploy to try to keep the very thin board advantage that xDoughynut has currently over just a couple chumps and this big Eclipse Dragon that's going to come through. And I think it's obvious that xDoughynut maybe just needs to take this damage.
You witless cretin.
Ooh.
Interesting.
So decides to sacrifice. I guess perhaps just wants to set this down to 4 HP and keep threatening with another vulnerable.
Chain Vest is definitely not the top deck you want to see when you already have a Chain Vest in hand. And you are forced into the... This is kind of what the Zoe Dragon's deck does as well, is it forces opponent into open swinging when they maybe want to develop or play a slow speed spell, because if they drop Lifesteal and they have a combat spell to back it up, it's very hard to deal with that.
And Renekton and Sivir, just trying to do their best to, again, just smork through this mid game and try to close this out. Honored Lord also going to join the fight, but the Dragons list just has you beat in terms of stat lines. And when you aren't able to take the safe trades that you want because your opponent's also running Demacia, right? Has access to Sharp Sight to fix those trades, has the combat tricks as well. It's going to be a really bad time for you. Fortunately, Sivir level up will save the Honored Lord with a quick attack.
Duckling, does this position feel familiar at all from our games? Not you on this deck, but just Aesol turn 8, Eclipse Dragon down, big board. I'm right at home watching this game.
Don't remind me, Squeeby.
And look at this. You see, like, the units were there for xDoughynut, but you talked about the pressure of forcing that open attack means you can't take the risk of just developing this pretty wide swing and a Ruin Runner in order to try to pressure. And we did see at the end of the previous match that xDoughynut does have those rallies, and Brinster knows it. And if you can't keep up on the wide board, then you have to fear that rally. You can't make a really large mana commitment. Even Sky's Descend, is still going to leave the Ruin Runner and the Sivir alive.
Yeah, 100%. As a greedy Targon gamer, I think the play here you want to make is maybe get rid of the spell shields if you can get your board wide enough and go for an obliterate in the next turn. If they don't have a board, they can't win, and you probably can live through this turn. But it'll be interesting to see. Yep, just going wide. This is looking like a good line here on the side of Brinster.
And so xDoughynut just passing says, I have 6 units in play. And Brinster is just being forced to develop card for card here just to maintain unit parity. Another Ricochet coming through here.
Does it hit Zoe this time? It does. Wow, it's a honing missile on those Zoes.
Put the Eclipse down to 1 too. One more on the Eclipse would have been like pretty much the nuts with that thing. Hit the Zoe and kill the Eclipse too.
We are threatening ASOL level here, which is just brutal because there's no tools on the side of this Demacia Shurima deck to deal with an ASOL level. There's no real way to prevent it aside from oh no, there are concerted strikes, but at this mana point it can't happen. So this ASOL level looks pretty free, and
yep,
it's looking rough here despite the wide board on the side of xDoughynut.
Yeah, this list again, it felt like it was pretty strong in a TLC. And it was just, again, the double Blighted Ravine came through. The concept of this deck with, like we saw, Fleet Feather Tracker and Honored Lord is very heavy on challengers, trying to maybe punish Aurelia Azir a little bit. And I think that, a lot of players, when they were building their lineups, they thought to themselves, either Aurelia Azir is just going to get banned a lot, so there's kind of no point in just bringing like a free ban. I want to force my opponent to think a little bit more. And so by bringing a deck that's meant to target that one, that kind of, when you dig how many layers down in strategy do you want to go when building your lineup, maybe you are countering something that ended up not being a very large presence in the tournament.
Like I said, getting rid of those spell shields. There is an open happening here, but if we live through this open, it's Sky's Descend time, I think.
Yeah, you Sky's Descend, and there's no like fast speed rally in response to that. Nothing that's going to protect the board. By hushing the Sivir, takes the keywords away from the entire board, and now you have some better blocks to happen here.
But xDoughynut, it is worth mentioning, we're on round 5, and they've made it this far with this lineup. Like you were saying, Scarzig, this deck would be good into a lot of things you'd expect to see in the tournament. Thresh Nasus, Aurelia Azir should have a good time into TLC as well. But these Demacia Targon Dragon list with access to so much healing, so many combat tricks, it can be a very rough time.
Yeah, and ironically, we didn't even see any healing from Brinster, right? Nope. It was just early Zoe, just holding down that early mid game, despite xDoughynut developing like a pretty strong curve. Not being able to get those clean attacks on your attack tokens is what leads to this scenario. You've got the wide board, but once they hit this late game, you have Eclipse Dragon and Aurelion Sol, and you have the stat line advantage. xDoughynut can no longer take those really audacious attacks that you want with this list. And so, rally here, Golden Aegis going to come through.
I would expect to see a, probably just a Crescent Strike come down here. Yep. You could also play a 0 mana Great Beyond.
Yeah, Crescent Strike off of the Traveler is just such a heartbreak here. You're hoping to push through that last little bit of desperate damage, and xDoughynut has been stopped by Brinster at every turn.
Yep, something's gone awry when they're playing a 0 mana 13/8 elusive.
With spell shield.
With spell shield.
Those for the Screeching Dragon. I thought that we were going to see perhaps an Eclipse Dragon there for the Nightfall ability, get another 0 mana. But look at this, Brinster just adding insult to injury. Just keeps developing here, and xDoughynut going for yet another rally.
And Brinster, okay, yep, there's the single.
That should
So it's important to note that even though Sivir's going down, you do still rally, but xDoughynut needs to, yeah, the double chain vest not going to do anything here.
Brinster moving on to the final set, cleaning it up with a 2-0. A valiant effort there from xDoughynut, but a combination of good draws and a solid deck lineup in general is going to be too much to top.
And I do want to definitely give, a big shout out to xDoughynut, because this is another player who is taking some older style technology from previous metagames and trying to innovate on it and bring it into the future, right? Like, again, like the Sivir Garen should just have that mid-game, like, Smorky dominance with the elite package, and trying to make use of that to counter the metagame, but just didn't end up working here. Even when you get those good matchups, it is still a card game, of course, and that's honestly, I think, been the big theme of today, is that matchups not going the way you expect them to at all, and maybe we're going to see players just, rethinking, like, okay, maybe a lot of these matchups aren't as favored as we've been led to believe, and it's okay to maybe roll the dice a little bit on some, not be too worried about bringing an unfavored list or something that maybe has some bad matchups in the metagame.
I'm going to jump in there and say we do have a bit of a game left from Reborn NA versus Psycho. If you want to dive into that perspective, Duckling, on the Reborn side, we have Draven Ezreal playing into Zoe Vi.
Ooh.
And we're
so
solidly in the mid game.
Yeah, how do you feel about this matchup overall? Zoe Vi versus Ezreal Draven. This isn't one that we've seen too often.
I would say, just based on my experience playing Targon in general to it, because of star shaping, there is a good bit of game on the side of Zoe Vi, because it's very hard to deal with a Great Beyond or an Immortal Fire, given that they can either live through, one spell and then strike, or that they can live through a Scorched Earth or something like that. So going for a big elusive swing is probably how I would expect this game to be ended, given that all the other units can be traded out pretty effectively with the Draven Ezreal tools.
And so, as you said, the star shaping does come through, but Reborn is looking to just develop an incredibly wide board and just punch through that healing, recognizing that, again, Ezreal Draven not going to be favored if this game goes too long, and is going to try to clean things up now.
Yep, and we have a 6-cost Tri-Beam available as well. We may want to clean up... Okay, we're opting for the stun, and then we can clean the Vi up with it afterwards, but... Wide boards of decently statted units is something that Targon is generally not good at dealing with.
Very true here, and I mean, he could even Reborn can even continue to replace the Silence Ballistic bot with another Thorn of the Rose here, and just continue to put the pressure on. It looks like he's going for the Static Shock play, but that would have been another potential line too, opening up that Guile again, and further stunning another unit.
Mm-hmm. Ezreal at 5 out of 6.
Oh, I thought he had attack token there. My bad.
No worries. I know that Reborn certainly would have wished to have the attack token, but instead just develops the Arachnoid Sentry to stun this Vi and continue to build up this incredibly threatening board. All Psycho can do now is just develop some chumps and stop this onslaught. Even if a little bit of damage gets through, this is going to set you on a trajectory for Burn to be the lethal.
And all the while, this Tri-Beam's getting huge, already up to 7.
And is Reborn going to stop at 8 or press the luck and go for 9? Do you want the Bright Steel formation? Or just stop at 8, hope for fair, and maybe hope for Tiana Crown Guard? Man, there's a lot of strong options when you have a Tri-Beam in your early hand like this, and so many 3-mana plays. The world is your oyster. You get to decide how strong you want that unit to be. Don't stop at 7 though. That's the debate. Yep. I've seen like Smooth Soloist or something come out, or Savage Reckoner, and it's awful.
I think typically 4 is also not a great spot. There are some units, but like generally the pool of 4s is somewhat understated.
You have all the Allegiance cards.
8
like,
is powerful. 8 is powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect because you could also get the boat too.
You can get boat, fair, yeah, so many things.
Right.
Wait, Dreadway now, that's true.
Dreadway now. Oh, baby, Reborn, you've got to do it. You've got to get the Dreadway. I hear the call of RNG, the call of your destiny to give you the Dreadway. With this leveled up Ezreal, let's go.
I really like this Ezreal develop here. It's kind of like a check if the opponent has Thermogenic Beam, slash a way to deal with it, and if they don't, great, and if they do, we have a backup Ezreal, and it also puts perfectly 8 on the stack for the Tri-Beam, so we can kill this Vi too without it being a threat to the Ezreal.
I would say this is looking like a little bit of a shoes on the other foot scenario here. You want, generally, as the Targon player, to have more cards than your opponent. You're creating cards. It's kind of to be expected, but here we just see Ezreal Draven completely outvaluing, and we hit the boat into Ezreal!
The prophecy has been fulfilled!
Wow.
Dreadway is here!
We got the unique Ezreal proc with it too, dealing 4 damage.
And we probably just we could have axed the ignition here to push 1 extra damage, 2 extra damage actually.
Yeah.
You do have access to it again, but I think you would have wanted to get that damage last turn. Like I said, here's the big elusive. Usually you want it to be able to kill your opponent in 1 hit here, but they do have access to the Ezreal as well if they need it to block. So it doesn't look like... It may connect, actually. It depends how Reborn wants to play this, but it's looking very good now with Boat on board.
Oh,
yeah, I'm not sure how... stacked Psycho's deck is with burn spells. If Reborn's worried about if that connects, if the opponent can have like a get excited Mystic shot, it might just be worth trading off the Ezreal if we can find the lethal.
Yeah, maybe you block with the Ezreal, then you Whirling Death the 1/1, and you just try to feed as many spells into it at this juncture. And Ignition's also going to get its damage doubled, so you're going to deal 2 damage with the Ignition. And notably as well, Dreadway, it's not just about spells, it's all damage. So, the Ballistic Bot hitting through is going to deal 4 or 8. And if you do, you just go for the Whirling Death. Oh! Okay, so Reborn is going to Whirling Death to pop the Spell Shield on the Great Beyond. I do like this line as well.
I do too.
Yeah,
and
he can flock it now.
There's 2 Get Exciteds and 3 Mystics on the side of Psycho. Just if we're keeping track of burn.
So this really is coming down to the wire, but the Dreadway is going to be enormous for making sure Reborn has a multitude of options to top deck here and close this out, even without Ezreal.
You guys ever seen a 1-mana card do 8 damage?
Oh my god, let's go.
Huge hit with the boat. Duckling, if there's the opposite of a caster curse, it's the caster prophecy, and that is what happened here. Boat is too much to stop, going for the open swing into the surrender, and that will close out the game. Reborn emerges victorious. to Thresh Nasus on the side of Reborn into Zoe Vi. Duckling, what do you think about this matchup?
So, I honestly I haven't played a ton of Thresh Nasus or Zoe Vi. I know Thresh Nasus can be a bit vulnerable to Hush in general, but you know it's something that the experienced players have like. It seems like that was like more of an issue initially, but the more experienced players have realized that if you just wait until you have a second Nasus and you threaten the bonk, then they're kind of forced to Hush then because now you get your spell shield. Uh, and if they don't Hush then, or if then you know that they probably don't have it and you're good to swing with it, and that tends to be how the Targon matchups go. But it does require finding multiple copies of Nasus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the P&Z package, you know, you have access to like some piecemeal removal, like we talked about the Get Exciteds and the Mystic shots that can maybe stop some of the Glimpse Beyond from coming through, stop some of these wider swings from coming through. Psycho doing the best they can to just develop an early game, and we've got Cursed Keeper into Ravenous Butcher.
That's the
Seems
opening
to be
you
the
want.
classic combo.
Yep.
And already
Full connect.
9 damage.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And Psycho not even opting to stop that. Says, I need to keep this Ballistic Bot in play. I have to grow it up a little bit more in order to get these blocks. And Spacey Sketcher, also another baby blocker that might not be able to hold down the fort well enough.
This is a game plan where you're saying, I need to stall out, look for star shaping, look for fangs, and try to hold on through this crazy onslaught, which is exactly what you want to be doing in the Thresh Nasus matchup. You find the Equine or the Bakai Reaper. That's probably the best thing you can hit it on, so you're happy about seeing that. But it is still a very wide board to a not so very wide board here.
This list, the Rubens Zoo, as they're wont to call it, has been a list that you hear a lot of whispers about, that the deck has a lot of good matchups in the metagame. Such and such went on a very high win streak with it. There's only a very small handful of players that pilot the deck consistently and seriously. And I am glad that Psycho is presenting it here. I talked about how it made a very powerful showing in the NA seasonal tournament, but now we're sort of just seeing how if you mess too much with that formula, it can sometimes betray you. You need to be running very specific cards, I think, and have a good read on the metagame. Targon and P&Z both present a lot of powerful tools that can make their way into this deck, and you need to make sure that you're presenting the exact almost perfect, I think, distribution of removals and threats for the current metagame.
Yeah, I actually tested the Ruben Pile deck prior to seasonals going into it to see if it would work in a triple Targon lineup for me. I believe What Am I did bring it, but I tested it specifically into Thresh Nasus, hoping that with Hush and Thermo and Vi, it would be very favored into Thresh Nasus, and it felt very close to 50-50, at least when I was piloting it. Maybe I'm not the best pilot of it in the world, but I was not happy with the win rate I was getting into Thresh Nasus and opted to not bring it. And it is board states like this that make you see why it may not be always as favored as you might think, looking at the cards in the Ruben list.
And despite that, Psycho did decide to bring it after all, and after a little bit of early game development, you know, is still on death's door, right? All you're doing now is just trying to stabilize as much as possible, hoping that there's no Blighted Caretaker, hoping that they aren't going to play Nasus on curve. Already at round 5, Psycho needs to do so much work just to stabilize this board, and Reborn ready to sacrifice the prey into Spirit Leech if it doesn't get cleaned up right now. And there it is. Yet more threats being presented on the board. And Psycho going into round 5, hoping for a Vi at the very least, something that can start swinging on these, clearing it out.
Soft pass with the ignition.
This maybe suggests to Reborn that there is the Vi in hand.
Yeah.
This is sort of like what we saw previously with Deep, where you're trying to just wait and see if your opponent is going to develop a better target for that card. Plays the Serpent, another means by which to pass that action back.
Still looking like a Vi, and buffing it up to 10 attack if possible before the swing.
Ooh. Reborn considering the right of calling here, but recognizes that, you know, a Mystic Shot or something could deny that champion draw. Might just be forced to sacrifice a Mana Crystal.
How are you feeling looking at this game right now, Duck? Who are you favoring in terms of board state and, I guess, top deck potential to win?
So it for Reborn's sake here, he really wants this right of calling to go off. Like he has the Glimpse Beyond his backup if Psycho were to respond with a Mystic Shot, which is nice, but the ideal circumstance here really is to find the Nasus now. The Nasus should be decently sized, given that the opponent is at a 7 health Nexus, and we just want to try to set up lethal through 1 star shaping here, I think, because we're kind of starting to be put on the clock. Found Thresh, but I don't know if that's quite good enough.
Yeah, despite the early curve, right? The king of Ravenous Butcher, Cursed Keeper, with the Bakai, a lot of damage being put through early. You still need to think about how you're going to close out the game. And this is where, you know, maybe the Ruben Zoo starts to bear its fangs. You think that you have the game in the bag. You don't really consider what this deck can do to bring it back. And it's not just about the deck beating you. It's about them stabilizing and then finally overtaking you, right? As again, you think you're in a good spot, and then they survive a couple lethal swings. They get that star shaping down. Then suddenly you're staring down a Great Beyond or an Immortal Fire, right? Alongside the Vi, who is about to get pumped up and potentially flip.
Yeah, Reborn definitely wants to end this game ASAP. As it gets later, the draws most likely get better and better for Psycho, and their chance at life stealing and pushing that health total farther and farther away from Reborn becomes more likely. So probably expecting to see a glimpse this turn to dig, or maybe we're going for the Thresh into a full swing. Yep, and trying to level the Thresh here. And we see a Thermo come down.
Big Thermo to answer this Thresh. And so this just tells us, right, that Psycho recognizes that I'm comfortable with the stabilization here. I'm going to throw all my mana away just to get this threat off of the board and just chump from here. This is still a pretty wide swing, and this is what Nasus Thresh likes to do. Even if you're removing their big threats, it's this little chip damage that you're taking over the course of the game is what's going to add up. If anything sticks with a significant attack total, you're still under a threat of atrocity. And Psycho now actually opting to block the Sand Soldier, just in order to keep the Vi alive.
Yeah, it blocks the same amount of damage as a 2-1, keeps the Vi alive. We are at 4 HP here now on the side of Psycho, so if there isn't any healing, a Cursed Keeper into an Atro is looking pretty juicy, and there is the Fangs coming down, so that may stop this plan.
We found the Glimpse Beyond just in time.
Yep.
A Glimpse Beyond to sidestep the lifesteal, a classic play, especially for these aggressive Shadow Isles decks. And here it is, the Cursed Keeper gonna come down, and Vi gonna flip. Because even if you put the Glimpse down in order to stop the card draw, ooh,
that's interesting.
Decides that Vi flipping is the bigger threat, not the lifesteal.
Yeah.
Okay, saying I'm gonna eat this lifesteal. I may have just gone for the stopping lifesteal play there. What about you, Duck?
I think so too. I think we have to risk that they don't have star shaping when we get a draw like this, the no Nasus draw, triple Thresh. I think we have to start taking some risks, and
there is Get Excited, I guess, as well, that can stop a 4-3 Atro. Maybe double Mystic, but it's going for a win, I would say, is going for that play. And like we said, the longer this game goes, I think the harder it gets on Reborn's side, unless we're looking at exactly a Thresh top deck. So It's coming down to the wire. It's, you've never seen a 20 health to 7 health game where it feels so close.
I was just going to say that early setup from Reborn seemed like they were going to run away with the game, and Psycho fought back valiantly.
Mm-hmm.
This Vi has already killed 3 units so far and is still surviving with 1 HP and tough. And Submersible now coming through to reload and put Reborn back on the clock.
That's maybe the magic of this deck that I wasn't able to capture in my testing, is turning it around, stabilizing with a Vi. Maybe you get it, haven't seen it yet, but a star shaping, using those sketchers to kind of trade effectively out with the board, and just holding on until you can get your later game threats, your elusive game plan going. So well played from Psycho thus far to hold out against this onslaught from Reborn.
And Thresh has to be the one to sacrifice himself to take down this Vi. If she flips, that's just going to be another unit in play that's just threatening your Nasus, right? Like if you top deck a Nasus and you slam it down, if it's not big enough, then Vi is just going to challenge it. And so now with the attack token, a second Vi coming down from Psycho, and this means that, are you going to pull the Cursed Keeper to deny a Slay proc from the opponent? You still have 5 damage from the Submersible, decides not even to take that option.
And that is the card you definitely want to see.
And let's get a quick cover here. Nasus is a 12/12.
That
bigger
is big
than
boy.
Vi. And there is enough mana to just slam that puppy down and start threatening the atrocity. Oh. Doesn't want to give it away. Doesn't want to yet play it into potentially a thermogenic beam. Needs to deal 1 or 2 more slays before they're confident that the Nasus is going to be
If they played into a thermo
fight.
beam, though, they would just be winning with the Atro.
True.
I don't know about this play here on the side of Reborn. There may be something I'm missing. Duck, why would you not slam Nasus there?
I mean, I think he's fearing Hush, but
It's always going to be a problem.
But yeah, exactly, and it's only more and more likely as the draws come. So I'm not seeing the reasoning too much. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I don't think we're at the point right now where we have the freedom to do this, to make this play. Like if this was like 3 turns ago, like maybe I could see this.
To be fair, Reborn is at 20 HP.
Right.
So despite the stabilization from Psycho, we talked about how their deck is just going to survive, right? And then there's the threat of star shaping to close out. There's no like Zoe threatening to level up. This is a fresh Vi that's not stacked up to a large attack total yet. And maybe Reborn is thinking, if I do some early work with this third Thresh, get it to flip, and go to get double Nasus in play, that could be the most winning line from this position, to just have overwhelming force to finally beat down the door. But Thresh now gonna get sniped by Vi, and the Warrior also being developed. Oh no, the Thresh line is being cut off immediately.
This is nice here. He can Hush the Nasus, but he can't Mystic Shot it, which was like a threat on the previous turn. And it's not too relevant. I think the play that he's going to go for here, though, is Nasus into bonking. So he can go for the Hush, and he can't Mystic Shot the Nasus. The Nasus still lives. The bonk doesn't level it, but now you got a Hush out, and now maybe your Atro can get through. And
Guys,
if he doesn't have
the
Hush, if he doesn't have the Hush, and the bonk just goes through, now we have Spell Shield, and now it takes like double Hush to stop the atrocity. Unless they like Mystic Shot this turn or something to proc it.
It looks like both of these players are guaranteed a spot in the top 8, and they're both currently, I think, the only XO players in the tournament. So now, this is a lock for top 8 cut just between these 2 players. They will be in there.
Wonderful. So now they're just going toe-to-toe for bragging rights and for better seeding. And I think that Reborn, despite having such a massive HP advantage that immediately got evened out with this Vi Zoe, the deck that everyone never counts on, never gives proper respect to, has suddenly jumped out and is threatening a massive lethal. Here comes the Siphoning Strike onto the Challenger unit.
Doing
Yeah,
this
very nice.
to prevent the Hush. Yeah, go for it, Duck.
Exactly, yeah, targeting the one with 2 health so that if Nasus gets Hush, it still kills the unit. We still get the buff stats on the Nasus. Nasus has Spell Shield now. If he doesn't Mystic Shot or get excited or something this turn to proc the Spell Shield, he's going to need exactly double Hush to stop this atrocity.
Oh.
He does Mystic Shot.
Let's go. The Mystic Shot. Psycho has 4 cards in hand. Very high likelihood that the Hush is still there. And this is very patient, right, from Psycho. If you have the Hush, you're not even worried about maybe using it to stop the Siphoning Strike like you talked about. Because Reborn NA targeted that 2 HP unit, hushing the Nasus doesn't matter. Gonna get another Slay. Just gonna take the time before attacking. Going to see what Psycho commits to. Guiding Touch. This is showing that perhaps there isn't the Hush in hand, getting a little desperate. Nasus is so big now, he gets to swing through. You force Psycho to trade away a little bit of this board. The 9 HP that Reborn is sitting at could be the counter stabilization from Psycho. 2 Mystic Shots have already been spent just to keep the board stable. No threat over the top burn that sometimes P&Z can pull off in a miracle.
This is do or die. There's the Hush.
He's got it.
And so that is going to be the full block coming from Psycho and another draw. And this is Reborn's entire board now getting cleaned up. There's an atrocity in hand. And at the very least, you can send 4 damage to Psycho's Nexus, but there's no extra burn on top of that. And I think that Psycho might have actually overcome.
Wow.
The triple Thresh draw just wasn't the power that you needed. If there was, another Nasus or potential for a double Nasus play to happen.
Yep.
And Psycho throwing out the cupcake
Garen.
emote. Oh my god, that is the most tilting. Both players still making top cut, but Psycho is thinking so many steps ahead to get preemptive mental damage for tomorrow.